Welcome to I Hate Your Taste in Movies. This is a movie podcast where we make our friends watch some of our favorite movies and have them tear them to shreds. My name is Austin.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jackie.
And you can find us on Twitter at I Hate Your Taste or on Instagram at Hate Your Taste Pod. And this week we are watching one of Jen's favorite movies. What are we watching, Jen?
So we are watching Gremlins this week. Ooh, a nice, exciting Christmas movie for you guys.
Yes, this is our right before Christmas episode, right?
Yeah, Christmas is in a few days.
That is unfortunate for our listeners.
What's your history with this movie?
So I saw this movie when I was a kid. Obviously, it came out in the 80s. I was a child of the 80s, so at some point it made its way onto my eyeballs. And what I remember the most is being obsessed with Gizmo, and just, he's like the cutest thing in the world. When you're a child, obviously it like hits you. I just wanted one, and I remember my brother and I think we had like a Gizmo toy, and like we talked about wanting to get like a dog and naming it Gizmo. We were just real into Gizmo. And then I actually didn't see it as an adult up until last year at Christmas. A movie theater here in Toronto was doing like a screening of it downtown. It was called Review Cinema, so shout out to independent theaters. And I went with a group of friends, some of whom had seen it as children like me, and some who had never seen it. And the ones who had never seen it ended up really liking it. So I was like, this bodes well as a pick. You don't need nostalgia to love it. Maybe these guys will like it. And then halfway through, I was like, Jackie hates this movie. I can sense it. So
yeah, you were correct.
Something clicked where I was like, oh no, she hates everything about this. So I'm expecting.
I was radiating hate out into the world like an atom bomb, and you could just sense it. It's like the shockwave of my anger slapped you in the face.
It was before you had even seen it, because I was watching it a few days ahead of time, and I was just like, no, she won't like this. Austin's a hit or miss, who knows, but it's just not going to be up Jackie's alley.
I just really respect that. Like, it's like you know me. It's like we're friends.
It's like I'm learning what you like and don't like through this podcast. Now I've realized that this is just very much a me movie and not a you movie.
That's nice, because I made it my goal in this podcast not to learn anything. So you do all the learning, I'll do all the reacting emotionally, and we'll get along great.
Great. So, had either of you seen this before, heard of it? What did you think it was about, etc., etc.?
I've heard of it, obviously, but I've never seen it. Yeah, I don't really have much history with it, other than like just kind of a vague awareness of Gizmo, and that's pretty much it, really. My summary guess was that a weird Furby-like invention takes over and everyone's obsessed with them. At first, they seem nice and cute, and then they have a bit of an evil side and they wreak havoc. I know there are 3 rules, but I can only remember 2. Don't feed after midnight and don't get them wet. And I don't think I realized it was a Christmas movie.
That's pretty accurate.
Not bad.
Yeah, close.
Hit some of the points, missed on others.
For sure. My connection to this movie is also 0. I knew it was the name of a movie. I also knew, this is super random, but like Austin and Die Hard, my only frame of reference for this movie was a Brooklyn Nine-Nine quote. Where Rosa said she wanted to bang Stripe, and he said, what? And she's like, I'm not going to try and bone Gizmo. So I don't really know the context. I didn't up until this point. Now it's much more disturbing than I thought. So I always knew there was a movie. I knew there was little puppety animal things, and I knew that you didn't feed them after midnight. But I thought that if you broke one of the rules, they turned bad. I had no idea it was like a spawning of Gremlins situation. And yeah, again, didn't know it was a Christmas movie, didn't know anything about it. I still thought they were all good. Like, I kind of thought that there was a bunch of them and they like partied and like were friendly. And it was like a kid's movie. And the second it started, I was like, is this a kid's movie or a horror movie? And I think I texted.
That's going to be coming back to a lot. Too.
Yeah, I'm like, what is the tone of this mess? I have no idea. So that's it. I had nothing really connecting me to this, and now the only thing connecting me to it is rage.
So, for those who are unaware, Gremlins is the story of a guy named Billy, who's probably in his like early 20s, I'd say, living in a small town, working at a bank, and then one year at Christmas, his father, who is a wacky inventor, finds him this pet, I will use as the word. It is a creature called a mogwai that he just steals off an old man, basically, to give to his son for Christmas. The mogwai is named Gizmo. It is adorable. Billy is a really terrible owner because there are 3 rules and he breaks all 3. It is do not let it near any bright lights, do not feed it after midnight, and don't let it get wet. Of course, chaos ensues. The mogwai sprouts into more mogwai, which then turn into gremlins, which then destroy the town on Christmas Eve. So just a fun-filled Christmas film.
Right off the bat, I have an issue with your summary in that Billy's not a bad pet owner. The rules are broken by his stupid friend, who's a Corey.
Yes.
A bad clock, which is not his fault. Actually, the
True.
gremlins sabotaged his clock. And bright light didn't really hurt him that much.
Yeah, he was pretty considerate about the light situation after the initial, like, oh, that's a bright light.
That's fair. I think my main issue with Billy as a pet owner is when he takes the mogwai to his elementary school science teacher to be like, figure this out for me. It sprouts when it gets wet. And they're like, cool, let's get it wet again. Yeah. And I'm like, you know this is not a good thing. And also, why is this teacher the one person in town that you think can help you?
Right off the bat, you've hit my biggest problem with this movie, which is just everyone's like, yeah, cool. It's an animal species we've never heard of or seen before, and it can speak English. I'm fine with this. I'm not calling like the biggest Harvard scientist on earth and getting $1 million as a discoverer of a new creature. I'm just like, oh yeah, here's your pet, Billy. Cool, thanks, Dad. I'll teach it tricks. Like what? They're so calm about everything that happens. Everyone.
It's
the police, true. The teacher, everyone's just like, I accept this. This is fine. This gremlin exists. It's not threatening my belief in the natural world. We're cool.
That is a fair point. But the way they kind of talk about it, it seems like, especially Billy's trying to pass it off as like, oh yeah, it's this animal that totally exists somewhere else, and this is just the first one that I have. So everyone kind of like treats it like, oh, it must be in a book somewhere.
It's
but
also
it speaks. It says bright light, no. Like, well, it has language. It's not even like a parrot that's, imitating language. It's responding to stimulus by saying no, bright light, no. Like, it's got a consciousness, you guys.
Yes.
It's basically a human being. This is terrible. I hated it.
It is wildly intelligent, so.
Just like,
that
makes me uncomfortable.
That's a fair criticism from Jackie the Science Queen.
Thank you, my crown.
I assumed they just kind of wrote off the mysterious species as being, some cool, weird Asian spiritualism, mysticism thing. Because that was really the vibe the movie gave, which right away I was like,
awkward.
True, but it's only Billy's dad that knows that. Like, when he gives it to Billy, he doesn't say, like, I got this from some, like, weird Chinatown shop. You know what I mean? No one else kind of knows that aspect of it.
Right.
So it's not like the characters can be kind of dismissing it as that.
Yeah, so they're just like, I accept that this is a mysterious English-speaking animal. I don't know anything about mysticism. I just believe that he found this on the street and hatched it, and now it exists. Like, sorry, it just strains. I love movies that have no basis in reality, but I need rules. I need rules. Like, this doesn't make any
rules.
But what about the rule that says this doesn't exist? Freak out. It speaks English and it's talking to you. Like, you should be having a panic attack. Billy should open that box, freak the fuck out, slam the box closed, kick it into the fire, end of movie.
How do you feel about E.T.?
Dislike. But he's an alien. That makes sense to me. If you said the Mogwai were aliens, I'd be like, well, legit. Of course they are.
We don't know that they're not.
That's true. However, they never mentioned that, and it never entered my mind until you suggested this possibility, so now I'm okay. Maybe it is. Maybe he's an alien. Now I'm okay with it.
Problem solved. On to the next point.
Done. Aliens.
Cute-ass aliens. I'll tell you that much. He's a cutie. Gizmo, he won me over for a little bit.
Yeah, he is so cute. There were times where I was just like, I love him. Protect him.
I love that most of the movie he's carried around in a backpack. He's just like rattling around with a bunch of pens. Pretty cute.
He's adorable. I love when he's offered fried chicken and he says no. He's like, no, I'm good. And it was very cute.
Yeah. He's like tucked up in the bed watching black and white movies all day. Like,
Yeah.
see, this is me as a child wanting one so bad. Like,
Well,
so bad.
we have Gizmo, I think, to thank for Furbies, because I did read that Furbies were inspired by Gizmo.
I was going to say that too. Like, it's obviously the same, although the Furby beak thing really makes them unappealing to me.
Yeah. Well, one thing that really upset me about the Gremlins, or about the Mogwai, I should say, were their human-like teeth. Did you notice that?
Yes.
I was all on board for their appearance, and then I saw human teeth, and I was like, nope, didn't need to see that.
We're getting right into it.
Sorry,
and I'll just tell you off the top, frigging hate the Gremlins. I hate them. They're so wet. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yes.
Everything about them is wet. I dislike that so much. I don't like slime. I don't like snot. I don't like all this weird world where gremlins understand how the world works.
Yes.
And they're just like, I'm going to get a gun. I'm going to dress up as a caroler. I'm going to play all these pranks on. Like, it doesn't. I hated them. I hated watching them. I hated every time they were on the screen. They're gross. They're gross, gross, gross. So I can see why this would appeal to a certain age range of child. But for me, even as a child, I would have hated this.
Can I just say, this is actually when I pinpointed that you would hate it, was like the bar scene with all the gremlins wearing tiny gremlin-sized clothes. And I was like, she's going to have an issue with the logic here, because where did they get these outfits?
That's my low point. I know that I'm spoiling it, but literally low point says the whole bar scene and general gooiness. Because guess what? I don't like that. Like, what? You went to the American Girl doll store and stole their clothes? I don't think they have a leather jacket for a gremlin there. Like, where do they get these items? How do they know how to put makeup on? How do they know how to play cards? Why do they like beer? Like, all of these questions that I have, and they make me so mad.
I could just sense that your logic self would hate that. But for me, watching that kind of scene, it reminded me of the things that I do like that you obviously don't. But stuff like Beetlejuice, Freddy Krueger, Chucky, like it's that kind of like funny, wacky villain that clearly was big in the 80s and big in Jen's life in the 80s. And I was like, that, like, it all just meshes together for me in some weird way. Like, I see that all in the same kind of subgenre, I guess. And so I know you did not care for most of those movies. So I was like, this is where we differ.
Which is so funny. I'm just like, why did I sort of like Freddy Krueger? But I hate Chucky. I hate Beetlejuice. And I hated this. What is the Freddy Krueger difference? Like, why did that one? I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I'll have to get to it.
Oh, no, never mind. I was going to say, maybe it's more like he's a person, but Beetlejuice is more like a person too, so that doesn't work.
Maybe
I was wondering
if
it was like the machine aspect of
Interesting. I don't know what it is, but
Gremlins.
I also like that I don't really have to most of the time justify. I just get to give my gut opinion, and then this one is no. N-O. Boo.
So, like I was saying, this was kind of an 80s kids movie for me. And I kind of put it in the category of like gateway horror. It's like a horror movie for kids. It's kind of introductory to horror. And that is a genre that I love that kind of doesn't exist as much anymore. And it makes me very sad. But this is kind of like in the same realm as like Goosebumps, you know?
Yeah, that was one of the notes that I made. Was just trying to figure out who this movie was made for, because it's just so, besides specifically Jen, because it is a kids movie, and you know, reading about it, they cut a lot to make it more family friendly, and it's not like not family friendly, but it's pretty pushing the boundaries. And then I did learn that this movie and Indiana Jones were the two that really helped push for the PG-13 rating, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I was kind of wondering, like, who is this for? Children? Teenagers? Like, I don't... Yeah. Adults?
I definitely think it's for children, but specifically children of the 80s. Because as a child of the 80s, there was no censorship. There was no coddling. Jackie's making a face because she was also a child of the 80s, but you were watching action movies, which again, were not kid-friendly. You know what I mean? We were of that generation where you're a kid and you don't have to be watching a movie specifically for kids. And this is a movie that is kind of for kids, but it's still a little more adult in the sense that there's violence, there's that grossness that Jackie hated. Like, it's not necessarily like super kid friendly, but it's still made for that kid mindset of like, I'm having so much fun with this violence and grossness because it's maybe a little taboo.
I agree with you, and that's true. I was just trying to remember what the first action movie I saw when I was younger was, and I think it might have been Cliffhanger, which is very violent. So interesting idea about how the 80s were just the Wild West essentially, and they were like, hey, go sit in front of the colorful box and watch things explode and people get shot.
Yeah, and I think like this type of movie, it like made little kids grow up into being horror fans, like little Jens out there in the world, watching things like Gremlins and Beetlejuice. And then the little Jackies of the world were like, I hate all of this, I'm watching Speed again.
I'm pretty sure there's only one Jen, because I've actually, maybe I would love to hear if there's other, but I've only ever heard of you who likes movies this much. Maybe Mara, but like horror movies, I just have not run into a lot of people who like them. I know they exist, but I would like them to be more vocal, because you're the only one I've met in real life who's like, I want to watch horror movies all the time.
I can introduce you to some people. Next year, when the world is reopened, I will be taking you to the horror film festivals in the city, and you will see it all.
That's real sweet. I think I'm busy. It is interesting. I actually am very interested in this concept of gateway horror, because it's like a snapshot of a certain period in time. Yeah, you're right. I don't see anything like this. Like is it because they coddle kids too much now that they don't make things scary for them anymore?
I think so. The only more recent movies I can think of that are sort of this like horror adjacent but for kids are a lot more like for kids. There's like the Hotel Transylvania movies, that kind of thing. But this sort of like sweet spot of like Gremlins or even Monster Squad, like I don't see stuff like that anymore. Have you guys ever heard of or seen Monster Squad?
No.
No.
I was going to maybe include like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So that's a little more, but again, it also taps into a little bit of, I guess, 90s nostalgia for that book. I don't know when that book came out. Maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was the 80s. But
yeah,
if you read those books, the movie was kind of cool, and like that was a good gateway, I think, for kids into the more like supernatural stuff.
Yeah, that is a good point. I forgot about that movie.
It also kind of seems that like once you become a preteen nowadays, I'm going to throw a nowadays in, youths these days, they skip the whole young adult stage and go straight to being an adult. Like, yeah, the TV shows they watch now are all about like intense, crazy sex and drug use and suicide and all these like heavy topics. And they start that so young. Like I'm not sure the opportunity to be a kid is the way it used to be.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I
that
feel
is
like
a depressing point.
I know, I'm kind of like, boo me for saying it.
Yeah. But it almost feels like two extremes, because I feel like a lot of kid shows today do too much coddling, and like, shows that were on when we were a kid, dealt with some dark topics in really intelligent ways and kind of made you think even as a kid. And I don't know if that still exists in children's television as much anymore or in the same way as it did in the 80s and 90s. But then, yeah, the extreme of there's no in between anymore. Like I remember being in like middle school and being excited to go home and watch The Weekenders. Like just, I don't even know if that's like still a thing, You
actually just made me realize something too. Maybe I'm just out of touch with what kids consume, but there were so many kids shows when I was like, I don't know, mid-kid. Like 8 to 12 or whatever,
middle grade.
That were really educational. Like they were stressing things like math and science and things like that. I haven't been aware of anything like that kind of programming for kids anymore. Like there is a lot of like, oh, your early childhood, we need to flash bright lights at you and shove Mozart up your butt. But after that, it's like, where's the educational programming for kids?
Yeah,
that's a depressing thought.
Also, while we're on the depressing kids these days topics, most of the people I know who have kids, their kids just watch YouTube. So there's not even as much of a audience for TV shows anymore. Right. Like they're watching YouTubers and like kids playing with toys on YouTube and unboxing different toys and
family vloggers
and all those things. So it's like there's not as much desire or appetite for kind of like scripted television shows anymore. So
that is depressing.
Yeah, maybe that's like a dying art form. R.I.P. movies and TV shows for kids that aren't garbage.
When I was young, everything was so much better. Yikes.
So Gremlins.
Gremlins. Like, yeah, let's go back to the heyday of movies. Even though I don't agree with that, but like the era I appreciate. So let's take it back. Let's take it back to Gremlin. What do I hate about Gremlins? Gremlins, bitch.
I was gonna say I saw in our notes, Austin, you wanted to talk about like 80s kids movies. Was there anything in our discussion we haven't covered yet?
No, I think we touched on a lot of that in our conversation. Just like the idea of like embracing sort of darker topics or things that you wouldn't necessarily see in movies today. The one that really jumped out at me is when they were talking about opening gifts, and Kate was like, opening gifts is like opening your wrists. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That totally stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that was way before anything crazy had happened. So it was a real shift in tone.
But you're right, like that conversation, Billy's like, the magic of Christmas, and Kate is like, people commit suicide at Christmas more than any other time of the year, which is, I guess, A, true a fact, but also like B, fucking weird thing to just throw out there in the middle of what up until this point had been a very whimsical kids movie.
I'm actually not sure on the stats. In my experience, most people commit suicide at the beginning of September.
Huh.
Right at the end of summer. A lot of kids do it right before school. A lot of people do it when it starts to get cold and dark. This might be too dark for the podcast. Sorry.
Yeah, that's real depressing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I think this movie does kind of have an undertone. Well, it's not even much of an undertone. It's an overtone of Christmas just having a dark side to it. And I think that comes up in a couple of different ways. And that was sort of the first way into that, where it's like, okay, this is not just a joyful romp. Because again, I didn't know what to expect. I don't think I realized that they turned into little demon monsters. So, yeah.
I agree totally. This movie is about dark Christmas. But what really underlined that for me was Mrs. Deagle, the psycho.
Mrs. Gulch?
Ooh.
Yeah, totally. And your little dog too. Guess what? I got that reference now.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys.
Same. Austin messaged me when she was watching it, and she was like, "So is this movie just Wizard of Oz?" And I was like, "Guess who understood that for the first time ever watching it this year?" When the old lady's like, "Give me your dog," I was like, "Oh, I get this."
And she's like, "I'm gonna evict you." All these there's so much Mrs. Gulch undertones with that woman, and looks like the same actress in my opinion.
Yeah.
Old lady, hair, that's all you need. She was crazy, worse than Mrs. Gulch though. She was like, "Give me your dog, I'm putting it to sleep, or I'm gonna give it a slow, painful death." Like, she actually says that she's gonna boil his dog alive. She's crazy.
She's Mrs. Gulch for the 1980s.
Yeah.
She's intense, man. She scared me more than the Gremlins did. I was like, she's gonna kill your dog.
And
enjoy it.
And that was a good dog. That poor dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barney was done rotten by this movie.
Yeah. His real name was Mushroom.
I was just going to say that. I took notes of the dog's name.
He also appeared in Pumpkinhead.
Ooh.
I have no idea what that is. Something about a pumpkin, I guess.
I just assumed Jen knew what that was.
You know who else showed up in this movie, who I recognize? Was a Corey.
Oh, yes. A Corey.
It was the 80s. You needed at least one Corey in your movie.
He looked so young.
Yeah,
he was a baby Corey. Gross. I saw him and I was like, why do I know that face?
I know, it took me a second. I was like, is this one of the Coreys? It is.
He's not in it very much, but
and he's
memorable.
Fine. He's not as terrible as he usually is.
I mean,
that's true.
I prefer Corey Feldman to Corey Haim if we're ranking the Coreys, so...
I think they're both at the same level for me.
I'm less familiar with Corey Haim. That's where I'm at.
I mean, you weren't a child of the 80s, so we forgive you. So, Gremlins. I really hate the dad. I wanted the dad out of this movie from the beginning. He's terrible and useless and serves no point, and I wish he was gone.
He sets the whole story in motion, though.
Yeah, but you don't need him. Have an alien just beam Gizmo down. Bingo, bango, you're done.
Sorry, now I'm just picturing... Why is an alien beaming Gizmo down? To what purpose? Is he just like, here you go, Earthling, take this?
Obviously,
Merry Christmas.
It's to sow chaos, and it's the first wave of the invasion.
Okay. He's just making a whole new movie in her mind.
A way more interesting movie, if you will.
I will take Gremlins as an alien invasion, reboot. That would be fine.
I guess it's just the whole dad vibe, like the entire movie with the stupid inventions that don't work, like that subplot. It's a little Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but not as whimsical.
I did feel like the inventions that don't work, it was like one too many for the joke, in my opinion. Like he had his like toothbrush thing that didn't work, and then the weird egg peeler thing. I'm guessing that's what that was. That didn't work. The orange juice machine that didn't work. I at least thought that something would come from that. Like one of them would be useful at one point for killing a gremlin, but no, they were just useless.
Well, one did, yeah, I guess one did kill a gremlin. It was like that weird blender thing,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
but I don't know if that, like, that obviously wasn't its intended purpose.
But I thought they would play more of a role in the plot, but I mean, I think it was
Yeah.
just highlighting some of the other
Speaking
themes,
though,
but
can we just jump right into that kitchen scene? That
Yes.
scene of Billy's mom
yeah.
Just massacring gremlins.
going ham? Seriously. This movie up until this point, I seemed pretty harmless and stupid. And then it flipped. The switch totally flipped for me into this like death fight of like she kills one in a blender violently. Like you see it spinning around with his legs. Then she psycho stabs one with a butcher knife. And then she puts one in a microwave. This was so disgusting. I covered my eyes. I could not watch him explode a microwave. I don't want to see that. I'm like, sure, you know, they're causing chaos in your kitchen, but these are living things, Billy's mom. And you're just like ready to really torture them in vicious ass ways. They didn't really do much to her. Like, why did she respond so violently?
Attacking her though.
No, I know they were.
I don't think
They hadn't
she
yet.
tortured them. She just disposed of them as quickly as she could have. Not unlike a certain final girl in Your Next.
Yes, blender to the head.
You just kill with what you got around you. They were gonna kill her.
Sure, but she was directly threatened. These gremlins at that point, they threw a glass at her and then they started messing with her kitchen. That's it. They didn't try and hurt her.
Yeah, I agree to a point with Jackie. Like, the gremlins hadn't done anything evil yet to her. We, the audience, knew that they were evil and were doing evil
That's
things. True. But she, as a character, didn't know that yet. But I think it's also just part of what we were saying with it being kind of like a kid's movie, and you kind of have to, like, jump to the next thing instead of having it kind of drawn out. So kind of it's just like, we know they're evil. We know she needs to kill them, so that's why she's doing it. So she just immediately, like, tosses him in the microwave and presses start, and it's hilarious.
Yes, that makes sense. I love
You really, like, yeah, you guys think that's funny? Like, you laughed?
No, I don't think it was funny. I just liked the scene.
Okay.
It was like,
Well, Jen's like, yeah, I did think it was funny. Jen, you
Yeah.
thought it was funny?
Yeah.
But, okay, so I guess before this, they've attacked the teacher, right? So we do know that they have bad intent?
Yes. They also
Okay.
strung up the dog, but again, the characters did not know that that was them.
So here's my question about the teacher. Is he dead?
Yes.
Really? He's
Yeah.
dead?
Yeah.
they like kill people.
I just saw that he had a needle in his butt, and I thought maybe they sedated him.
No, they like kill people dead.
Yeah, he did.
So, okay, all of these things I have, and like there's at least 6 times I wrote, is this character dead? So the teacher is dead. Do we think that, well, we know that Mrs. Daigle, whatever her name is, she's dead, and I'm like, good riddance to you.
Mm-hmm.
And Murray and his wife, that couple who got, did they get?
They are not dead because they are in the sequel.
Oh, good.
I definitely thought they were dead.
I thought they got plowed with that snow plow. I thought it like chopped him in half.
No, I think they say that, like, it took him a long time to recover, but he did not die.
So then
Okay.
here's my question though. Do you think they just lived retroactively? Like if the sequel didn't exist?
You know, I don't know, because I don't even know if they were necessary for the sequel. So I think they could have died in this. I would have been fine with that.
I think they were dead until the sequel because he's like, oh no, the farm burgers? That's horrible. Like the police got the call, like
Yeah.
it sounded like they were pretty dead.
Yeah.
So okay, the whole time I'm like, are these people dying or are they just like incapacitated, I suppose? Which does bring me to what I thought was the coldest moment in the movie, where there's a bunch of gremlins like beating the shit out of a Santa Claus guy, and the cops like squeak their window up and drive away.
Yeah.
They're just like, nah, I don't think we can help that guy. He's a goner. Goodbye. Wee you.
I did enjoy that. I love the
You like that? I'm
uselessness. The uselessness of cops in movies that I watch versus like the hero cops in movies that Jackie watches. It just
Yes.
speaks to completely different things. But yeah, I just love that the cops, the second shit was actually happening, they were like, we don't know what to do. We're out of here.
Yeah,
Because I was thinking of like, imagine being that Santa man and you're like being ripped apart by these little animals, and then you see police and you're like, oh, my savior, they'll help me. And they're just like, gotta go, bye. Like that's devastating. I would feel very, very sad, and then I would die.
Yeah. You would get
Not a
ripped
great
apart
day.
by little green men.
So we do think they would like rip people apart, like
Yes.
they're killing people. Okay.
Yes.
See, I don't like that at all. I don't like this.
Well, they're the bad guys. You love a black and white good versus evil.
That's
so
true.
good is Gizmo and Billy, and bad is Stripe and his friends.
But the Gremlins are all Gizmo in a way.
That's
so that
true.
line
They're
is
Gizmo's
blurry.
But
children.
Gizmo knew what he could become, and he said no.
So you think he turned down food because he knew it was after midnight?
Yeah, I do.
Well, then why didn't he tell Billy it was after midnight?
I don't think they speak like fluent English.
He could have been like, no. He could have been jumping, and he could have mimed looking at his watch, like, Billy, your Timex. It's midnight.
Yeah, I thought Gizmo just genuinely wasn't hungry. He looked
Oh.
at his like children wolfing down that gross, greasy fried chicken, and he was like, "Ugh, not for me."
I thought that he knew because he was like also very scared of them once they did hatch, which I mean that it's possible that he's just never seen that before. Maybe he didn't know. I kind of thought he knew that he was like, I don't want to be that. I'm Gizmo. I'm cute. I'm good.
I mean, okay, Gizmo's cute. I really can't fight that. He's a tiny, furry little thing, so he's cute. But I don't like him.
Okay.
I'm like, you're useless, and you kind of caused all this.
He saves the day.
How?
He drives his little car.
Yeah, and then he like crashes it.
Well,
It's all pure luck
adorable,
that
so.
he happens to save the day.
He also drives that little car, he quote unquote drives that little car into the dog's leg. Did you see that?
I totally did. That dog jumped. He jumped really high. Like the dog was not expecting it. That
Yeah.
dog actor, that was a genuine
Mushroom.
reaction.
Yeah,
Mushroom.
poor mushroom.
Mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was uncool, Gizmo, honestly.
Yeah, it's like
trying to
that's
replace
gotta
Barney.
have been a mistake, right?
But like I could see how if you were a child, you'd be obsessed with Gizmo. And I do, like, objectively, he's very cute. I thought he was going to reveal some secret to beating them or like sacrifice his life to beat them. But he was just kind of like, take care of me more, take care of me more. Now I'm going to leave. See ya, Billy. Bye. He was a nothing.
About teaching them a lesson about greed and
Yeah, let's talk about
responsibility.
that lesson that you mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
Because I did not get a consumerism is bad vibe at all.
that was like the first thing that jumped out at me. It's like a combination of little clues that I got. The first one was I was confused right off the bat when they were like in that or Chinatown store, which was I was like, okay, this is vaguely racist, maybe. Okay, see how this pans out. And then the neighbor was like ranting about American-made products and how foreign products are pieces of shit and you can never rely on them. So I'm like, all right, so we got a little more like xenophobia question mark or like just afraid of like the importance of I guess American-made products, like which is fine, but like the fear of something new that started coming up. And then I also thought that the dad's inventions and everything also tied into the consumerism is bad thing and like Christmas just as a whole being a time to spend money and buy frivolous things. And I don't know, I think it did kind of sprinkle in throughout the movie. And then I Googled it. I was like, Gremlins, comma, consumerism. And a bunch of articles popped up. So I was like, I'm not an idiot.
No. I just didn't get it. I think I wasn't looking for any kind of levels in this movie.
There was one point where I was like, I'm definitely getting the sense that American greed is the true villain of this movie. I'm trying to figure out where I made that note.
It's funny that American greed is the villain, but also they're saying buy American.
Yeah.
So which one is it? But also I didn't really get that. I knew that one guy was like, oh, get American made, whatever. But I thought that was all to set up this idea that gremlins exist in machines and that's what causes all the problems when your dishwasher breaks. It's a gremlin. I thought they were moving to more towards that being the gremlin origin story, not meaning consumerism is bad. But I believe it now that you say it. And I mean, they spend a whole chunk of the movie destroying property and things you own and toys, which honestly, maybe that's what I hated the most about this movie. Beyond the grossness aspect was the mess. They made such a mess everywhere they went. And it is very, not even that neat or tidy. You guys know that. But watching this mess made me very uncomfortable. I'm just like, someone's going to have to clean this up. There's food everywhere. They're breaking everything. Like, it's so much work to put this to rights. I'm like, you little shits. Behave.
I'm gonna echo what Austin said. Obviously, I didn't pick up on any of this when I was like a kid, but watching it now, seeing sort of like just the worldview of the 80s. Like I mentioned, how Judge Reinhold is kind of like the yuppie businessman archetype, and then the dad, like Austin said, it's very like, I need the next biggest thing. I need the best thing, the newest thing, the hottest thing. Always like striving for more and more stuff. That kind of like American 80s consumerism, like excess, like just needing more of everything and always needing the newest, coolest things. And then it kind of comes in again when the like racist Asian stereotype character comes back to take Gizmo away and is just like, Americans, you aren't ready for this yet. It's sort of just like, yes, it's like saying like our culture is bad and there are other cultures that are wise and smart, which is also still in the xenophobia realm of things, but nothing is perfect.
Yeah, no, I definitely picked up on a lot of the kind of, I saw it laid out in an article about like kind of the fear of the other, and I think that is a good way of describing it. And I think that ties in as well to that guy ranting about American made products and like not wanting foreign products, or the Mogwai not understanding them, and you know, we're not ready for this. It's like fear of the unknown, quote unquote. And
actually, now that you say it too, there's totally that whole undercurrent of everyone getting fired and evicted and the bank closing people's, and like literally Mrs. Deagle basically like punching a single mother and her children, like, you're evicted, better ask Santa for a house, bitch. Like, it was, and then all the people who do that die, don't they? Well, maybe it's just Mrs. Deagle, but the big symbol of not Christmas spirit and greed gets shot out a window. So learn your lesson, people.
Also, all her cats are named after different money. Names for money.
Oh yeah,
I did notice that. She's like, dollar bill, come here.
And Peso, I think, was another one.
I totally had to pause to be like, are these cats gonna die? I don't want to see it. I mean, they are gonna go to the pound though. Sorry, Jen.
Well, they're gonna get adopted out by loving families.
I think people are too busy trying to rebuild their homes to adopt cats.
You know, fair point, fair point. The town was kind of decimated.
Oh my god. That bar, honestly, who owns that bar?
It's the man. Do you know when Kate is working at the bar and a guy like walks up to her and he's like, table 7 needs more drinks or something?
Right.
Just that guy.
That guy's bankrupt. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Also, why did Kate stay there so long serving the Gremlins beer? Like, I know there's a back door. Get out of there.
Yeah, like, does she need, like, money? Are they paying? Are they tipping well?
Are they tipping? Yeah.
Clearly not. And they're just, like, smoking and spilling and throwing stuff at her. It was very weird.
The debauchery of it all.
I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I know you love it. You love all the weird, wacky things they do. But every time they try something wackier, I was like, I don't understand. What is the goal here? Like, what is they're just agents of chaos? That's not interesting.
I did think it was kind of funny that the way they fuck up the town initially, aside from the killing of people, which happens a lot, but it's just to kind of fuck with you, like cutting the phone cords or the TV cables or the fucking with the traffic lights. It's like they just know how to just fuck with you.
And then they go watch a movie.
Yes. The bar scene,
awful.
I will say I was not a huge fan of. It was just too long.
I wrote so many notes. I wrote, oh, is there a girl gremlin? Because one of them's wearing lipstick. All of a sudden they're gendered. Who? What? And then one gremlin shoots another gremlin. Where did he get the gun from?
Was it
how
from
does
an
he know
arcade game
how to
or
make
something?
it work?
I was curious about the gun too. I think I missed something. Was it in an arcade game?
No, he shot the arcade game, and then he shot
Then where did he
another
get
gremlin.
a gun?
Where did he get it? And then one gremlin puts on a puppet show for another gremlin. And then there's a flash dance scene where the gremlin's wearing a sweater. This whole thing blew my mind. I'm like, what is actually happening? Like, who thought of this? what is the writer's room like? Where they're like, yeah. Then the gremlin spins around like a flash dance recreation. Like, who gave this the green light? It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Sorry, I'm just trying to look at my notes because I felt like I was writing down all the ones I loved in that scene. Oh yeah, I wrote the flasher, the jazz, the poker, flash dance. All great.
The flasher was not cool. That's a very 80s joke where it's like, sexual assault.
Like, yeah. Ugh, so good.
I love that we have the exact same notes, but mine's like, I hate this. And yours is like, I love this.
Yeah, I love the Gremlins, like just drunk at a bar, no reason, it makes no sense. It's just a little this is what I mean when it's like a kids movie but kind of adult, because it's straight out of a cartoon where it's like the characters are doing something wacky that makes no sense in the world, but it just is happening because it's pure entertainment. But it's also the fact that they're getting drunk and killing people, so it's a little adult.
This was another thing that came up when I was researching the movie a little bit, and the scene was kind of pointed out within the idea of sort of the fear of the other that I was talking about. This movie got a lot of crap for being really racist, and like this is the scene that's brought up a lot, and I didn't pick up on it at all the first time through, but I think it's because it played on trends of the 80s that I would not have been aware of. But
Sorry, you mean the bar scene, right? Oh,
okay, so supposedly it was a racist depiction of Black youth. We also earlier had seen the Mogwai eating fried chicken, and then all the music that they were breakdancing to, and then they were wearing newsboy hats and dark sunglasses, which were fashion trends of Black youth in the 80s. So that also kind of plays into that idea of fear of the other. I also wrote down the idea of white flight, so everyone moving to the suburbs, or rich white people moving to the suburbs, and that being the little safe sanctuary, and then all this
it might even
urbanization.
be something to do with gun violence too.
Yeah. So yeah. I didn't, yeah, for sure. So I didn't pick up on that initially, but
me neither. Yeah, it's hard to recognize things that were like stereotypes in the 80s because they've changed, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never knew that. But now that you pointed out, you can see it, and it's upsetting.
Yeah, I came across that too when I was researching, because obviously I picked up on all of the like Asian racism, but I didn't get that from it until I read it like you, and I was just like, oh, maybe. Like, I didn't see that there in that scene, but like it does make sense when it's all laid out. And I also saw a few articles pointing out that Gizmo is kind of like the quote unquote like model minority. He's like one of the good ones. He's not acting out like them. He's following the rules and kind of assimilating. And I was like, I never looked at that interpretation either. Like, I never kind of saw this aspect of the movie, and it was just interesting to read about.
Is there any way you guys came across anything about what, like, the director or anyone involved in this movie responded to that criticism with?
I didn't.
Just wondering if they were like, no, I never meant that. It was supposed to be just, like, you're reading too much into it. Or if he was like, yeah, I was making an allegory about the world.
That's kind of what I think would have been happening. But I mean, I didn't see anything specific.
This is the worst part of our podcast, is when we watch movies we loved, and then we're like, people tell you things about them, and you're like, oh no, it's so racist. Oh no, it's so sexist. What am I going to do? My love for it can't just go away.
Is this Jen's first experience with the True Lies effect?
I mean, I can still love the movie regardless of the fact that it might be super racist. See, because even if they're trying to comment on racism, I don't think they're doing... You can still be racist while doing that. Yeah. I think the example is always Sarah Silverman, if you guys ever followed her. She used to make a lot of, like, jokes using the N-word and stuff like that, but she was like, oh, I'm doing it from a place of satire. I'm making fun of racism. And then this was obviously, like, a couple decades ago. And then even just a few years ago, she was like, I was a fucking idiot. Like, I thought I was on the right side being like, I'm making commentary about racism. But no, I was just being racist and thinking it was okay. So it's kind of like, you can have the good intention of like, I'm showing how awful racist behavior is, but if you're still depicting racist stereotypes, what's the...
Yeah, you're not blameless. Totally. Yeah. That's interesting. And awful. This is why I love watching movies on a purely superficial level. Never feel bad. Can we talk about Kate for a sec? Can we talk about Kate?
Yeah.
Always.
Holy fuck. Did that flip over into Crazy Town when she's like, I don't like Christmas. And he's like, why not? She's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then later, her whole speech? Where did that come from? That was so weird.
I
Yeah,
love
can we
that
break this
speech
down?
because it's out of nowhere. They're just like looking around, they're searching for something. Billy's only half paying attention, and she's just like giving a dramatic monologue about her father's death, and it's amazing.
So that I understand this correctly, he was dressing up as Santa Claus to surprise
Yes.
the family,
Yes.
and he fell and he broke his neck
Yes.
Inside
in
the
the
chimney.
inside the chimney. All right.
And then they thought he was missing until he started to smell
Oh God.
the decomposition smell. And then they were like, oh, wow, we found your dad. He's in the chimney.
I bet you that's happened though.
Dude, I'm sorry, but that's happened a lot. I have multiple stories and donors of people who've done similar things. Trapped between walls. Chimneys narrow as they go down. Never try and get in a chimney.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
can't
I don't
say.
know if this was maybe more common back in the day or something, but I'm like, what kind of moron actually tries to climb down a chimney?
Definitely it happens. I think the predominant group who do it are thieves. They
Fair.
think if they can get into a house that way. But I really thought they were going to make it even darker, where they were going to say Kate's dad climbed down and then like got stuck and starved to death and was like screaming for help, but no one came. And I was like, what? At least he died instantly. That's a little bit less
Yeah,
dark, I guess.
Better, I guess.
I just was not expecting that monologue at all. I was like, she doesn't like Christmas because her parents got divorced. Poop.
Yeah, I
But instead
definitely
it's
was
like-
expecting. I was definitely expecting like a moody teenager.
Totally. And that, like, it was so weird because it took it all the way down into dark territory, and then you're supposed to flip it right back into like wacky gremlins riding a skateboard. It's just, it totally was out of place. Didn't make any sense. I didn't like it. I still don't like it. The idea of it's terrible. I don't understand what they were going for. Why would they put that in?
I think it's just pure, like, dark comedy. Like, it's funny because it's so out of nowhere. And maybe that's not how other people view it. Maybe that wasn't the intention, but that's just how I view it. Where, like, it's so unnecessarily, like, depressing and a huge tonal shift, and that makes it hilarious. They also, just to say, they spoof it in the sequel. I watched the sequel after watching Gremlins the other night because I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch the next one. And they're like in the middle of the action or whatever, and someone mentions like Abraham Lincoln, and Kate's like, don't say that name to me. One time when I was 7, I was at the park and a man, and then Billy's just like, we don't have time for this, let's go. So I appreciate that they were kind of like tongue in cheek with it.
That's kind of funny. So sorry, but the first time you saw that monologue, did you laugh? Were you like, haha, this is funny?
Yes. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't know if I remember that scene specifically, but as an adult, yes, I laugh.
Okay, very interesting. I don't know you, but at all.
I think it's also Christmas has a dark side. Sometimes your dad falls down the chimney and breaks his neck.
See, I also don't like that idea. Christmas is a happy time, supposed to be, right?
Not according to Kate.
I've had pretty, like, a sheltered life, but my Christmases usually involve lots of food and lots of booze, and that's pretty good times.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never had a Christmas full of serial killers or tiny gremlins murdering the town, but I enjoy watching it.
And if you did, you'd probably have a different opinion about Christmas.
Yeah.
And a monologue. I have a question. I want to know how you guys feel about Stripe. Like, he's just straight up bad, right? Like, there's no redeeming characteristics on this mohawked gremlin. Like, what was his deal? He's just the leader.
Yeah.
But he seemed that he was smarter than the rest of them.
I think there's not necessarily like a reason why he's the leader. It's sort of like in a litter of puppies or something. One of them might be like dominant and the other ones follow him. It's kind of just that.
Well, apparently, Jen, I'm sure you know this, but apparently in the original scripts, Gizmo and Stripe were the same character. So Gizmo was supposed to turn bad, and then I think it was Spielberg that kind of put his foot down and was like, no, he has to stay good. We need him to connect to the audience. And like,
Need to get that merchandising, sell those stuffed animals.
And also just, well, yeah. But really that was the reason. But his excuse was that having that audience attachment to Gizmo was kind of the difference between just a straight monster movie and a movie that had some heart to it. So, I don't know. I'm glad they kept them separate characters.
Same.
What else do we want to talk about?
We could talk about how the whole movie theater thing. Again, I have the same problem with that as when the mom just goes ham and starts murdering gremlins in her kitchen. where it's like, I get that they're causing chaos and they're killing people, not excusing them. I'm not saying they're cool or anything, but like they mass murder them with an explosion.
What were they supposed to do?
I don't know. This is the point. Like maybe they this is probably even darker, but I'm like, maybe you want to keep a couple of them for studying purposes because you've never seen anything like this before. You could have an alien autopsy, just like herd them with a big net. I mean, they're bad in numbers, but they're not really that threatening one-on-one. People can kill them pretty easily. You can kick them and it goes flying. Like, they're not that threatening unless you get swarmed by them.
But because they can multiply, you can get swarmed so easily.
I guess, but only if you have water nearby. This is a genocide.
I mean, I don't know what else they were supposed to do.
I guess. I don't know. I just... I'm a person of conflict, apparently, because I want to see people get shot, but I don't want to see a bunch of gremlins get exploded. I just thought it was uncool. Like, you murdering them. And it's mass murder. It was vicious. It kind of was reminiscent of that Inglourious Bastards movie theater scene, which is very upsetting.
Yeah.
It's a little bit the same. And it's funny.
Sorry, did you say it's very upsetting in Inglourious Bastards? When they're killing the Nazis in the movie theater?
Yeah. Sorry, Jen. I agree. That's upsetting. Watching people slowly get roasted to death and pile up outside of locked doors.
But they're Nazis.
Upsetting. Yeah, I know, but it's still upsetting. I don't want that to happen to anyone, even Nazis. I'm going to say it. I don't want Nazis to live, but the idea of that panic feeling and being trapped in that movie theater, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Nope, right. Not even a Nazi.
So you prefer if they were just like quick death, shot in the head?
For sure, definitely.
Right. You know what?
And I think they prefer it too.
I think I prefer this method of getting rid of all the gremlins at once because it was just a one and done. Because I don't like gunfights. We've established this. That drags it on too long. Just get them all done at once. It was the same with Battle Royale when it was like the lighthouse scene when like 6 people died. I was like, sweet, knock them off. Like, I don't feel like dealing with this one by one bullshit.
I really wanted this to have a nice bow ending where Mogwai, what's his name? Gizmo, was like, oh, by the way, here's their secret Achilles heel, salt. And they were like, haha. And they salt them and they all die. I wanted it to be more like that, less like we're going to set them all on fire and explode them. You know? I wanted there to be a very simple, easy solution that just kind of erased them almost.
Could they not have just turned the lights on in the movie theater?
Yeah.
That's another question I have. So light obviously hurts them, but it's prolonged exposure to light will kill them, right?
I think artificial light won't necessarily kill them, but sunlight will.
So at the end, when they have the ultimate showdown with Stripe, is that sunlight that gets them?
Yeah.
Ah. I thought it was like a fluorescent square light.
No, I think it's like the sun is starting to come up now because they've been battling all night.
That makes sense.
Okay. That is real gross. Stripe's ultimate demise.
Unexpectedly gross. I'll give you that.
And long. Like, you guys have sometimes made fun of me about like long villain deaths, or maybe I'm imagining that, but in action movies...
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. In action movies, it's a trope for them to have a long, prolonged villain death, or like Carl comes back when you think he's dead. This Stripe death felt like it took an hour. I was like, yeah, he's dead. Make the melting stop.
I was fully on board for a bunch of gremlins singing Hi-Ho from Snow White. I don't know about you guys. I was totally sold. And there was a little shot of Gizmo also singing along. It was cute. It got me.
I was going to say, the one musical part of the show, Austin's like, hook.
There was also a little gremlin in the crowd wearing Mickey Mouse ears. So, nice little nod.
Yeah, but he's dead now.
Well.
Like, everything that you enjoyed of the gremlins, they all got murdered. So
that's fine. They were evil. They were going to kill them. They were going to kill all the humans. So I don't really care.
Gizmo lived, so not all of them died. Like, we have cute little Gizmo. Yeah. He's in the sequel.
So I guess what was going to happen was they were going to get more and more of them were going to get wet and they were going to take over the earth.
Yeah. They were going to spread their chaos and destruction everywhere.
Chaos is exactly it. That movie theater scene of them, like, constantly throwing popcorn. Whew. Again, that was very uncomfortable. I just don't know what it is. The chaos, the mess. It's not anything I want to see. Like, I literally turned away from the screen. I did not want to see that. It was too much.
In a weird way, it kind of reminded me of the movie theater scene in Scream 2 when they're seeing the stab movie and everyone's just like running up and down aisles and throwing popcorn. And I'm like, I've never been to a movie where that has happened.
I think it was somehow less chaotic than the movie theater scene in Scream 2.
That's true.
I hate that scene. I hate it. I was like, you couldn't pay me millions of dollars to be in that theater.
Like, I've been in some wild theaters, but not nearly that level.
I'm definitely the old lady who's like, settle down up there. You children, don't throw up popcorn. I always will be. Follow the rules.
That is true.
Society works.
Support you on that.
It's a
Team
contract.
chaos.
Actually, I knew that about you. Just like, I do remember you talking about Horror Fest once or twice, and you were like, yeah, I'm totally going to this like horror movie. It starts at midnight. And I was like, bitch, please. I'll have been in bed for 3 hours. That's just not my style at all. I'm like, how's some daylight activities and then a nice cup of tea in bedtime. Thank you.
All right, Jackie, get ready. Next year, post-COVID, take a nap midday because we're going to a midnight horror movie.
I'm going to be a year older, a year closer to the grave. I am not going out past 9 p.m.
YOLO, you gotta go out.
I hope that I'll change post-quarantine. Not sure I will. I like the option of doing things. I don't want to do them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna force you. It's gonna be a group outing. We're all gonna go.
Me and Jackie are just gonna be crying because we're so tired.
Straight up. And I'll bring glasses that have like eyes painted on them and I'll just be asleep.
I'll like elbow you.
You'll have to like Clockwork Orange her. Anyways.
Yeah, so is that Gremlins?
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. Did we cover? I feel like we covered everything, but this feels...
I feel like that's the most efficient we've been in a while.
Do we want to get into high points and low points then?
I think we do. I think that we should make it a little bit shorter for our people.
All right, Jackie, you can start.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. I would love to.
Let's get the bad commentary out of the way first.
That's rude. Well, I already told you my low point, which was the bar scene in general gooiness. And that really stands. I said in the beginning, they're wet, and they are. Like that general slimy, gross, snotty part, that was a very big 80s movie thing. I don't know why all the practical effects, they did these great practical effects, and then they just covered them in snot. It's just unnecessary. I don't like it. I don't like watching it. I don't know if it's even like a visual, the idea of thinking about the texture, the people making it. Like I don't like it. It weirds me out. And it's something I never realized about myself until this movie, when I was trying to pinpoint why I didn't like it so much. And I was like, it's wet. That's it. That's all I can say. And for high point, I had a really hard time picking a high point too, because
there's so many.
There's none. So the two that I came up with was, one, the educational video they were watching in science class about the heart was actually pretty interesting if you listen to the commentary.
That's what Jackie was paying attention to.
That is maybe the best high point you've ever done.
They were talking about how heart rate varies, and like they were talking about the resting heart rate of a blue whale's 25. I was like, bitch, that's crazy. So I was very interested in that. It reminded me of science class, which I very much enjoyed. And the second high point, and I think you'll agree with me on this one. At one point, Gizmo falls into a garbage can, and then he's like, his little tiny legs are sticking out of the garbage can. I was like, that's cute. That's pretty cute. Those little legs, and they were wiggling. I enjoyed that. So that's my other high point. That's it.
Excellent. I approve of those high points.
Thank you.
That was great.
So my high point, strangely enough, I know Jackie's going to disagree with me on this. That's cool. My high point was when the Gremlins were pretending to be carolers. Now, hear me out. I thought it was... I laughed out loud, which I very rarely do, honestly, when I watch movies. And I think it's because I hate the idea of caroling. Like, I find it so awkward. And, like, they actually show it when Kate and Billy are talking at one point. There's like carolers in the background, and the people who own the house are just standing there awkwardly. Like, what do? You just stand there and listen to people sing at you? And I don't know. I don't like it. It's awkward. But for whatever reason, when the Gremlins are pretending to be carolers, I laughed so loud. I don't know why. It tickled me. So that's my high point.
Where did they get the teeny tiny songbook? Where are the
Who
clothes
cares?
from?
Who cares? It's delightful.
I care.
They probably
Can I
stole
also
them from all the carolers that are going around the town.
and shrunk them?
Yeah, why not? Maybe they cut them in half.
Also, sorry, but just a side note to that point, Mrs. Deagle straight up is gonna throw a bucket of water on children caroling until she realizes they're gremlins. Like, she is so pure evil. She was gonna soak them. I was like, this bitch means business.
So that was my high point. I don't know why, but it tickled me. And then my low point was, I think I mentioned it before, but just the all the inventions, all the failed inventions that the dad has. I just thought it was like went on one too many times for the joke to be funny.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Sorry, you just reminded me of a moment that I'm going to add as one of my high points. It's such as like a little background joke, but when the dad is at the invention convention or whatever, and he's on the phone to the mother, and in the background you can see the time machine from H.G. Wells' Time Machine, and then it cuts to the mom, and then it cuts back, and the time machine is gone, there's smoke everywhere, and people in the background are looking around confused. That's such a good, like, just little visual joke in the background. I loved it so much. So that is a high point. And then my other high point, my main high point, I don't know, I struggled. I was gonna just say Gizmo because he's adorable, but I do think my high point is what Jackie hates the most, which is the really wacky gremlin stuff. I just think it's so fun, and that's what really makes the movie for me, is stuff like them in their little costumes causing chaos, and like them just acting insane, and like the flash dance scene, everything in the bar. It's so funny. I love it. So that is my high point. Deal with it. And then my low points. I don't know if this is necessarily a low point, but I do think I would have liked it more if some of the stuff at the beginning of the movie came into play later on. Like, the characters at the bank don't really mean anything or do anything, and then instead you're seeing other characters that are kind of getting involved with the gremlins, like the cops and the Santa, and it would have made more sense if it had been like the bank manager and Judge Reinhold, you know what I mean? Just sort of making the movie feel a little more complete. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my low point.
Why did they even set that up at all? That's a really good point. They never come back.
I mean,
even Judge Reinhold's only in the first 5 minutes.
Even the whole idea of the Miss Gulch character wanting his dog, like, that nothing really comes of that. He's never really afraid for the dog.
Yeah, there's just no resolution. You're right. Like, there's so many things. The people getting evicted, the business is closing, everyone's unemployed, the dog might get murdered, and none of that's fixed. I mean, she dies, so she can't murder the dog anymore, but...
Yeah. And I kind of like how nonchalant they are. Like, after they think she's attacked the dog, they're like, we'll just take the dog to Grandma's house for a while. And I'm like, you think that's just going to solve this problem? The dog just gets a little vacation?
And yeah, why did she even want to kill the dog? She accused him of breaking her snowman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know for a fact that the dog did break the snowman?
I assume it did.
It probably did.
Okay. All right. We'll give Miss Gulch the benefit of the doubt, I suppose.
Yeah, I think she's wildly overreacting.
Yeah. But he like accepted it. He was like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Let me know what I owe you. Like, he was willing to...
Yeah, which is weird because the dog's like attached to him like glue. You'd think he'd know if it was running around breaking things. Quotes, quotes, quotes?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. This is a struggle. Because I try and find quotes that I like. This movie had 0.
Oh, you didn't like the whole, like, opening gifts is like opening your wrist line?
That's the one that I have written down. While everyone else is opening up their presents, some people are opening up their wrists. That's one that I wrote down. And then I did write, her dad died in the chimney. This is so fucked. Bring this up. Like, I was going to quote that whole monologue, but it's too much. We've gone over it.
The last line of her monologue is like, and that's how I found out there was no Santa Claus. Like, that's the most tragic element of it. Like, Santa's not real.
And, I don't really have any real quotes. Because Gizmo he's not quotable. He just says snow, bright light, etc. And he's the real star. And,
by the way, Jackie, do you know who voices Gizmo?
I don't know. Who?
Howie Mandel.
Ew, really?
I did not know that.
I thought that at all.
I do have to ask, I don't know if anyone knows this, was Howie Mandel like a voice actor before or something? Because I know he used to do a cartoon, like a voice of a cartoon too. that I watched as a kid.
No, was he a comedian? Like, I don't even know what he's famous for, to be honest.
I think he's a comedian.
I think that's why they got him. Or I think he had some sort of, like, voice act in his act.
Maybe, because, like, just as you're saying that, like, I know he's the voice of Gizmo, and he also used to voice a kid in a cartoon, so I'm like, did he do, like, voice stuff and then became a comedian? Or I guess maybe he just was a comedian with a weird voice talent, and they just made him do stuff?
I'm not well-versed on Howie Mandel.
Me either.
But, yeah, so that's... I really don't have quotes.
Oh, wait,
Quotes? No.
I did write down a quote. When Gizmo's leaving at the end, he says, "Bye-bye, woof woof" to Barney.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's very cute.
That's fucking adorable.
Down.
I would die for Gizmo.
You know what? It's so weird that, like, I can see intellectually why people, like, love Gizmo, but he has zero effect on me. Like, I feel nothing. Like, I feel worse for the Gremlins who get burned in the movie theater than I care about Gizmo. That's
weird. I'm not going to lie to you.
I would, like, kick Gizmo across the room without caring that much. It's just, I don't know. He doesn't hit it for me.
When I was watching this and sort of, like, remembering how much I fucking love Gizmo, it was the first time that I realized I kind of get why people are so obsessed with Baby Yoda right now. I don't watch that show, so I don't really, like, care too much, but it's still just that idea of just that cute little, like, thing. I was like, I get it. Baby Yoda is Gizmo.
It's true.
That's a very apt comparison. They're the same. Big old eyes, big old ears.
Cute little alien thing that the main character has to try to take care of. Got it.
So for trivia, so the budget for Gremlins was an estimated $11 million. Its cumulative worldwide gross was $153 million. So in Cantonese, Mogwai means devil, demon, or gremlin. This does provide a pronunciation guide, but I'm not even going to attempt at that. But it's the Cantonese word for devil or demon. Or gremlin, so that checks out. One of the studio notes to the director and the executive producer was that there were too many gremlins. So Spielberg suggested cutting them all out and calling the movie People, which made me chuckle. At the start of the movie, when they're kind of setting the scene, you see the movie theater in town, and it's showing a movie called A Boy's Life and another movie called Watch the Skies. Those were both working titles for Steven Spielberg's E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So yeah, Howie Mandel, we talked about, is the voice of Gizmo. He also translated it in multiple languages. Like, he did the voiceover work in multiple languages so that they could tailor the movie to international audiences. And that apparently went over really well because they, like, picked up on local idioms and things like that and jokes. So that's kind of a interesting fact. I think Howie Mandel was confused. He was like, I was barely speaking English. Why am I doing this in multiple languages? But it worked. The Gizmo puppets were particularly frustrating because they were so small, so they broke down a lot. And so because of this, a scene was included where the Gremlins are fucking with Gizmo, and they're like throwing darts at him. Remember that? Apparently this was included on a list that the crew had created called Horrible Things to Do to Gizmo. So it sounds like there was a lot of hatred for Gizmo because of the puppets always breaking down.
So sorry, they were animatronic? They weren't puppets?
Yeah, they were animatronics. Yeah, I said puppets in there, but they were animatronics. They each cost between $30,000 and $40,000.
Oh my god! I thought they were puppets.
I did too at first, but it makes total sense that they're animatronics because they move completely independently, and
yeah, I guess
they have a lot of facial movement as well. I know, like, Gizmo's face was, like, replaceable. Like, you could replace... I mean, that's how a lot of animatronics work, where you can, like, take out certain features to give them different facial expressions and things like that. So
creepy. Gizmo without a face.
Right?
Yeah. Upsetting.
So the film opened on the same day as Ghostbusters. So that movie, obviously Ghostbusters, did better in most cities, but Gremlins always did a lot better in New York City. And their theory for that was because people were pissed off at Ghostbusters for shutting down the traffic for so long to film the movie. That's not really related to this movie, but I did think it was funny.
That is funny.
I love it. Petty New Yorkers.
Yeah. Also, the rule for keeping them out of the light really was a practical purpose so that they could hide some of the special effects, hide some of the mechanics and stuff, just keep things dim.
Smart.
Yeah, right? Makes sense. That's pretty much all I got.
The only kind of piece of trivia I have that's more just like a fun fact for us is that the screenwriter for this movie was Christopher Columbus, who directed Rent.
Yeah.
Wow, he's come a long way, baby.
Yeah, he went from children's movies to a bad musical to back to children's movies.
It's the natural trajectory, I think.
Yeah, so 84 movies. Austin, you mentioned that Ghostbusters came out that same year. Um, it was kind of a weird box office because a lot of big movies came out that year, but the one that was number one is not the one that I would have predicted. So, out of these movies, which one do you think was number one at the box office in 1984?
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Gremlins, 16 Candles, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, or The Neverending Story?
Beverly Hills Cop.
That was going to be my guess, too.
You're right. I was surprised by that. I thought it would be Ghostbusters or Indiana Jones even.
The only reason I guessed it was because you said it wasn't the one you thought it was. I probably would have gone with Ghostbusters or Indiana Jones.
Beverly Hills Cop is amazing.
Those are the movies of 1984, so good job. Gremlins was fourth at the box office, Ghostbusters was second, and Temple of Doom was third. So Beverly Hills Cop took it.
That's actually, it must have been, it's just peak Eddie Murphy, right? Like,
Yeah.
he was really raking in the dough back then.
Ratings?
Ratings.
Jackie, why don't you rip the Band-Aid off?
Yeah,
All
do
right.
it, Jackie.
I said enjoyment, 2 out of 10. Oof, it was a harsh one, but it's honest. My commentaries were boring, gross, not fun, and also people died? Question mark? Because at that point I was still not sure if everyone was dying. I really thought the science teacher was sedated. I'm
So
sad
funny.
that he died. I wanted him to make it. He was the only interesting character. So I don't know. You know, it's just, again, it's got to hit that thing where I'm the wrong age to appreciate it. And in general, this is just not my style of movie. I don't think there was anything that could have changed me liking this. Even if they were all as cute as Gizmo, I don't think I would have enjoyed the chaos aspect. So it's just not my wheelhouse. And quality, I said 5 out of 10. I said it was probably good for its time. And my commentary was, I wrote this without even planning on saying it, but I wrote, good effects if you like everything to be juicy. So I'm just hitting on the same things I'm saying over and over. I don't like the way it looks. It's not mine, but they did a good job. Yeah. And the fact that it's animatronics actually gives me extra points because I thought it was just, I thought they were Jim Hensoning it, but they've obviously
I would imagine there were puppets involved as well, but yeah, it sounds like there were a lot of actual animatronics, which is very cool.
Very cool. They're staying at a 5 out of 10, but I give them those props.
For me, I think my enjoyment is definitely higher than Jackie's. It wasn't a full-blown 10. I think I'm gonna say like 7. I enjoyed it. I don't really have, there were parts that made me laugh. There were parts I wasn't crazy about. There were some parts that I think went on a little too long. But overall, it was an enjoyable time. So 7. And then I think I'm going to go with probably about the same. Maybe a little higher. I'll go for 8 for quality. I think it aged well. Like, it still looks good. The beauty of practical effects, once again. There's some parts that maybe aren't fantastic, but I think overall it aged really well. I thought the effects were really good, and Gizmo's adorable. So I think that boosts it up a little bit. And the dog is a great actor. Give him a dog Oscar. Shout out to Mushroom, who is surely still alive.
Yes, definitely.
100%. I don't know what my rating is, so I'm just gonna wing it. I didn't think about this in advance. I'm gonna say that my enjoyment was an 8. I think it's a fun movie. You guys hate that I use the word fun so much, but I genuinely find a lot of very weird things fun in movies. So for me, this was a fun time. I think it's a funny movie. I think it's an entertaining movie. I think it holds up. I think you can rewatch it year after year. I think it's a Christmas classic. Jackie, I'm sure you'll be watching it again next year around this time. It'll be great.
Yeah, when you Clockwork Orange my eyeballs, for sure.
So for that, yeah, enjoyment an 8. And I'll say the same for quality. It's, it looks good. Like you said, Austin, practical effects hold up really well. It's well made. I have no real complaints other than a few things. So yeah, this is a solid 8 film for me.
I will say the acting was actually better than I expected it to be.
What acting?
It wasn't fantastic, but I was expecting like painful 80s kids acting, and it wasn't that. The characters were older than I think I expected them to be, and they were therefore slightly better actors. Can you imagine if
Maybe.
Corey Feldman was the main character of this movie?
Yeah, okay, fair. But
Easily.
Billy was a blank slate. Billy didn't have a single expression the entire movie.
He didn't
He
offend
just
me at all.
stared
It was,
blankly.
just I'll take that over Corey Feldman.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I will too. I would take a brick wall over Corey Feldman. That is the truth.
Do we need to do a friendometer?
Super green.
Yeah.
Green is a gremlin.
Oh God, that better not be a thing now. I don't want that to be a thing.
Jackie's now taking me back down. She's like, never mind.
I know. I was like, wait, what's the color below green? That's the one. I don't hate you for making me watch this.
I didn't think you would. Was that on the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're friends again, but like, I hated Austin for making me watch Beetlejuice.
I always forget that was my pick.
I know,
Yeah.
me too.
That could have
But
been
like
either
during the
of us.
movie, I was actively like, I was so miserable the entire time that I was just like, Austin. But this time I was just like, oh, Jen, you're so weird.
All right, so that was Gremlins. That was the last of our Christmas movies. Now we're heading into the end of December, so we're going to be doing our monthly wrap-up where we're going to be talking about the different movies, TV shows, books, and podcasts that we've been listening to and enjoying this past month. So tune in if you're interested in that.
Yes. And you can follow us on Twitter at I Hate Your Taste or on Instagram at Hate Your Taste Pod. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. They really help. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye.